We had our first cold snap here, so we've had some snow, it's jumper time, and the princess is, well, we're not here to talk about the princess today. We are doing an artwork video. The last one that we did was the Daihatsu B, a little fiberglass car from Japan from the early 50s. This time we're going to kind of the other end of the scale. We're going with a steel car from the 50s from America. And we'll get into that in just a moment. My name is Angel. This is No Expense Spent. If you want to find out more about my artwork and what else I do, the artwork is what I do for a living, then you want to go on the website here, and that will give you lots more information on what's going on. Let's get into it, and you can see what it is I'm working on today. We're going to get straight into it. Unlike the B videos, I'm just going to just work, and we'll have a bit of a chat as we go. So what I am doing today is a Buick Super 8 custom, and when I say custom I don't mean a trim level, which American cars were prone to having as a trim level. I mean this is modified from standard. And the photo reference I'm using is also modified from standard, and that gave me a good starting point for the various adjustments I wanted to see. One thing I should definitely have done is a little bit of research into what the Buick Super 8 is and why it's called a Super 8 and when it was made and engine displacement and, you know, all those facts and figures that other people throw into their videos by doing extensive research, by clicking on a Wikipedia article and feeding it through an AI voice generator. We're not going to do that. We're just going to enjoy the process and these lovely curves that these cars have. And this is from the era when streamlining was a thing. So we'd come out of the 1940s post-war, and of course America was going through economic good times, unlike a lot of the rest of the world, and that meant their cars got bigger, flashier, more expensive, in ways that countries like the UK and Germany obviously could only dream of. And it was just their normal. But these cars were before everything kicked off with forward look and the excess of Virgil Exner, tail fins, lashings of chrome. These were a lot more understated in their own way. Not quite as much as European cars were. I mean, they had the gigantic bumpers on them, big engines. So they were more akin to sort of luxury vehicles in other parts of the world. But they still had that sort of 1940s aesthetic of sort of this smooth, futuristic, for its period, look, like fuselage styling, like aeroplanes and that sort of thing. But starting to lean more towards the jet age. But not quite the space age, which is where a lot of your sort of fins and chrome come in. Buick is quite an old company. Like many companies of its type, it got reduced in its later years down to little more than a badge engineering exercise, sadly. But they outlasted other companies like Oldsmobile and Packard, which was another big luxury brand. Although that's funny, you know, we talk about older cars and older stuff in general. We never really refer to them as brands because they sort of weren't. And companies like Buick were more the product of a person's vision of, you know, I want to make a company making this thing. I want my cars, my product to make people feel a certain way. And it's what we'd call brands now, but it wasn't really the same thing back then. But you could make a statement with the vehicle that you'd got. So if you'd got a Buick, you were further up the pecking order than, say, if you'd got a Chevrolet. But you were further down than if you'd got a Cadillac. And that attitude did pervade, it did continue for a very long time. I don't think it's as apparent these days. You do see it with a couple of luxury brands like Lexus and what else? Polestar, perhaps. You know, sort of halo brands as they are now. And that was a thing as well, back in the 50s and 60s. Chrysler, for example, experimented with it, so they had the Imperial. And confusingly, the Imperial was the Chrysler Imperial, or just the Imperial. And it was a whole mess. Whole mess. But yeah, what I'm basically doing here is I am tidying up ink lines. I'm tidying up pencil lines. We've not got to ink yet. And just getting my shapes refined so I can see where all of my details are. Haven't decided what I'm doing for a background on this one. I think I'm going to keep it fairly simple, so that the car is the main thing. I'm not being fancy with my pencils either. I always just use this mechanical pencil, which is an HB, and it is perfect for what I want to do because it's very, very similar in behaviour to the pens that I use. Okay, if I leave... Oh, that's the wrong shape. You'll have to excuse any noise you hear in the background here. That's what happens when you live in a house share in a semi-detached house. All the noises just travel through everything. There's not a lot I can do about it. Is that right? Yeah, that's about right. And phones go off, and I tell you, recording sometimes is a bit of a nightmare. Everyone wants you to have nice clean audio, and it's just not always practical. So you'll just have to put up with the lumps and bumps of amateur hour. It's all part of the process, it keeps it real. Wow, that's wonky. It's better. I was going to put a swamp cooler on. I don't really like it. I'm not a big fan of these mirrors, so I think we'll get rid of those. I mean, I hate to admit it, but sometimes less is more. Yeah, that's much better. Although I don't like that. Alright, good. Now, I've committed one minor crime on this piece, which is that I've added some items without understanding exactly why people have them. It's a bit like that thing where people get Japanese subway rings and put them on their car, but don't really understand why they do that. So, I know with a lot of 50s customs, particularly with the rockabilly scene, that you see things like foxtails and raccoon tails on the aerial. Now, for me, just noticed the battery was nearly flat, just had to plug that in. But yeah, for me, a raccoon tail or similar would be something that you would see on the back of a mod's scooter, which is a very British thing. So I don't know what the relevance is with America, I don't know exactly where it comes from. Feel free to enlighten me in the comments. The other thing that I've used is some cat's eye headlight covers. Now, I've got a feeling these might be a bit of a crossover from the lowrider scene, so they might be slightly anachronistic on this. But since I'm not trying to mimic exactly a modifying period in history, just the flavour of what these cars tend to look like, I think that's okay. But what these trims are, they're chrome or stainless steel, and they just go on to your headlights and are held on with the trim ring. You get lots of different designs of them. You get like a 3-pointed star one, and I think the other one is like a half cover for the top, so it gives it like a sleepy eyes look. But I felt the cat's eyes were probably the right look for this particular car. Again, feel free to educate me in the comments. Give me your thoughts, all that jazz. It helps me learn and do better with every piece. So I do like learning stuff about different car cultures. Oh, and if you are from a country I've not yet done anything for, or are aware of, like, I don't know, Brazilian car culture, Turkish car culture, and there's something you want to see, let me know. There's some interesting stuff I know in Turkey that people choose to do with things, they're not called, I think we have them as the Fiat Tempera, but I think in Turkey they're called something else, and I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. And in Iran, I think there's the Pekan Hunter, which is their version of our Hillman Hunter, which is a very popular car. Romania has the Dacia 1200. So, you know, there's so many things in other countries that I want to explore with cars and modifying and that sort of thing in my illustrations. I'd love to get some feedback and find out what you would like to see, what things you enjoy in your country and your car culture. Pinstriping. Always seems like such a good idea until I try and make it even, and then it never is. So I think we'll just leave this bit plain. I don't think I have the skills today. That's fine. That's fine. I think that's one of those things that maybe I should have planned the picture out to include it rather than putting it on a whim. Okay. Now for the grille. Lots and lots of teeth. Oh, wrong one. I need to have a bit of a think what I'm going to do with this background because I'm not entirely sure right now. Right, just shifted the camera around so you get more of a view like I can see this. I'm happy with the sketch at this stage. Played about with a few ideas for the background and settled on this sort of hit and miss diamond pattern on the back. The vertical and horizontal lines, they'll all come out. I'm not keeping the tiles. The other thing I changed was the horizon line. I moved that up. That gives the effect of visually lowering the car. It's all to do with camera angles and things. If I bring this line further down, the car looks a lot more stock height, which isn't what I'm going for here. I also didn't want to remove all of the tyre, shadow, undercarriage stuff here and make it look like it was sat on the floor, because I don't want this to look like a modern custom where you do put all the engineering in to get it right down on the ground. I wanted this to look more like it was maybe done in the 50s or 60s when the car was new-ish. so it would have been lowered by doing things like lorient blocks and chopped springs and that sort of thing. And you can only go so far with that before you have to start getting serious with gas axes and stuff. Right, I'm going to take a break from this. I like to do that when I get the sketch to this stage, so when I come to ink it, I can catch any mistakes before I put anything permanent on the page.